In this video, we'll be going over Gradelink's batch transaction feature. First, we'll go over how to create batch transactions for students and families. Then we'll talk about how to view a record of every previously created transaction. Next, we'll go over how to edit transactions with a focus on what you can and can't edit. Finally, we'll talk about how to delete batch transactions. Let's get started. To get to the batch transaction page, go to the Financial tab, make sure Ledger is selected, and click on the Batch Transactions button. The Batch Transactions page is divided into two subtabs, Add New and History. For now, we're only going to look at the Add New subtab. Creating a batch transaction takes two steps. First, we'll select students using the grid at the top of the page. Then we'll enter details about the transaction using the form at the bottom of the page. By default, the student grid shows all active students at your school, but there are multiple filters you can apply to help narrow down your selection, such as grade level or tags. To select or deselect a student, just check the box that appears to the left of their name. Next, it's time to fill out the transaction form. If you've recorded transactions in Gradelink before, this should look familiar. There are 4 required fields: date, session, transaction type, and amount, and 2 optional fields: reference number and memo. The date will automatically be set to today's date, although you can change it if you wish. By default, you will only be able to create transactions within the active billing period, but that restriction can be disabled in the Financial Settings page. After filling out the transaction form, click Add Batch Transaction. This will bring up a confirmation window summarizing the transaction you're about to create. If everything looks correct, click Yes. Some schools may prefer to create batch transactions on a per-family basis, where, even if you select multiple students that belong to the same family, only a single transaction would be created. This requires a slightly different process. In Gradelink, all transactions need to be associated with a student. As a result, before we can create a family batch transaction, we need to adjust the setting that controls which sibling to use if multiple siblings are selected while creating a transaction. Start by selecting the Admin subtab near the top of the page and then click on Settings. Under Billing Admin Settings, you'll see a setting called Associate Per Family Batch Transactions To that allows you to associate family batch transactions to either the youngest or oldest active sibling in each family. Choose the setting that makes the most sense for your school and then go back to the Batch Transactions page. Select students from the grid and then fill out the transaction form just like you would if you were creating a student batch transaction. However, this time check the box labeled Apply 1 transaction per family. When you click Add Batch Transaction, you should notice that in addition to showing you the number of selected students, you'll also now see the number of families that will be included in the transaction. Click Yes to complete the process. Gradelink keeps a record of every batch transaction created for your school. To view this record, select the History subtab. This page is divided into 2 parts: the Batch Transactions list at the top of the page and the Details panel at the bottom. To view information about a particular batch transaction, select it from the list. Then, details about the transaction will appear below. In addition to basic information, such as the amount the transaction was for, or the names of students that were selected, Gradelink also allows you to view each individual transaction that was created as a result of the batch transaction. This feature can be useful for schools that regularly create family batch transactions because the individual transactions panel only shows the students that actually had transactions assigned to them. That makes it easy to verify that the family batch transactions are being applied to the correct siblings. Gradelink also keeps a change log that tracks every time an edit is made. On that note, let's go over how to edit batch transactions. First, select the transaction that you'd like to edit from the list at the top of the page. It's important to note that Gradelink only allows you to edit unlocked transactions. You can tell if a particular batch transaction is locked or unlocked by looking at the locked column on the far right. Next, click on the Edit button. This will cause the edit form to appear. The edit form looks similar to the transaction form, but instead of 6 fields, it only has 4: date, reference number, memo, and amount. This means that you cannot edit the session or transaction type after a batch transaction is created. Furthermore, you cannot add or remove students. This means that if you accidentally create a batch transaction that is applied to the wrong students, the easiest thing to do is simply delete the transaction and start over. We'll go over deleting transactions in just a minute. Once you're done making edits, click Update. Click Yes in the confirmation window to complete the process. You'll notice that a new entry automatically appears in that transaction's changelog, summarizing what was edited, when, and by whom. Let's move on to our last topic, deleting batch transactions. To delete a batch transaction, select one from the list at the top of the page and then click the Delete button. Please note that Gradelink only allows you to delete unlocked transactions. A confirmation window will appear asking you if you are sure you'd like to delete the selected transaction. Once you delete a batch transaction, you won't be able to recover it, so make sure you've selected the correct one before continuing. Click Yes, and the transaction will be deleted. However, just because a transaction has been deleted doesn't mean it disappears entirely. Gradelink maintains a separate section of the History subtab for deleted batch transactions, so even after a transaction is deleted, you'll still be able to view details about it. To view deleted batch transactions, check the box labeled Show Deleted that appears in the top right corner of the History subtab. That wraps up our discussion of batch transactions. If you have any questions, please refer to the articles on our help site or send us an email at service@gradelink.com.